Hello, and welcome to Eastern Geeks Out, an EP Media associated podcast where I'll be discussing news and interesting topics in the gaming and entertainment world. My name is Deforest White, and I'll be your host for the duration of these episodes. We've got kind of a low bearing load here. Honestly, over the past couple weeks, not a ton has happened. Now, that's not to say that nothing interesting has happened, but in terms of sheer amount of content, there's not a ton to cover. So I'll ask you to forgive and indulge me a little bit this episode, because I'm going to run through our headlines real quick here, and then after that, I'm going to give all of you the beginner's guide to Kirby lore, because quite frankly, not enough people know that it exists. So real quick, let's run through everything that's happening in the gaming world first, before I dive into the depths of madness. Now, first off, this is a big one for me. Stanley Parable Ultra Deluxe has finally released, and it is fantastic. For those of you who are not aware, the Stanley Parable was a game that released in 2013 that was based around the idea of playing with player choice. A narrator dictates all of the movements that Stanley makes to follow a story, and the player controls Stanley. Now, whether or not the player follows the story that the narrator has dictated is entirely up to them. The iconic choice at the beginning of the game, although technically not the first choice you can make, is that Stanley approaches a room with two open doors and takes the door on his left. Now, because the narrator has said this, the canon, the canonical ending, is that Stanley walks through the door on his left. However, the choice is entirely up to the player. Stanley can walk through the door on the right, and the narrator will either struggle to try and keep up with the choices that the player has made, or he will just get really very upset with them. It's a very comedic game. If I had to describe it, I think I would borrow a phrase that the Game Grumps used all the way back in the day when they played the demo for the game. Which is that it's like being trapped inside the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. And it does very much fulfill that dry British Douglas Adams-esque humor. I believe Kevin Brighting is the narrator of the game, and he does a fantastic job. The voiceover work is excellent, iconic at this point. It does a fantastic job of predicting what the player can do and what they will attempt to do. It does a excellent job of parodying video game stereotypes and tropes, and also it plays homage to a bunch of other games. In the original Stanley Parable, prior to the Ultra Deluxe version, there was an ending in which, by rallying against all of the narrator's choices that he offered you and always choosing the ones that he didn't provide to you, you actually were able to go and play other games, but with the movement limitations of the Stanley Parable. So you would end up in Minecraft for a little bit and wander around a very barren Minecraft world, but without the ability to jump, so you were always just perpetually on the lowest plane. Or he let you play a single puzzle from Portal, but again without the ability to jump or even really have a portal gun or pick things up. So it's a very entertaining concept that sort of plays with the medium. But the Stanley Parable, the 2013 release, was actually itself a remake of, if I'm not mistaken, a 2011 game that was made using the Source Engine. For those unfamiliar, the Source Engine is a standalone engine made by Valve, the company behind Steam, for the purpose of the Half-Life series. This is also the same engine that Portals 1 and 2 run on, but the Source Engine has had a few iterations over the years. This was around, I believe, the same version of the engine that was used in the Half-Life remake, as well as Half-Life 2 and the various episodes, and it has aged quite possibly the best that it could have. The game still looks fantastic. And when you start playing Stanley Parable Ultra Deluxe, it's not going to be immediately apparent that the game that you are playing is different from the Stanley Parable. But when it hits, it hits hard, and all of the new additions are very blatant, very obvious, until they're not. This is one of those games that has sort of the entirety of the fandom around it is less focused on the outset of the game and more focused on the lore of it, the various hidden details, and it's just a very fun time. If you're the sort of person who enjoys meta narratives, who enjoys comedic writing, I highly recommend that you pick up Stanley Parable Ultra Deluxe. It's available on PC, PS4, and Switch at least. I'm not sure about Xbox, but I think it's pretty likely that it's there too. And if you don't want to fork over the money for Ultra Deluxe, the original Stanley Parable is also available on Steam for a lesser amount of money. And again, it is aged the best that it possibly could. And it's just all around a fantastic time. Moving over to the Nintendo Switch, we have a bit of an addition to the Nintendo Online expansion pack. You might remember a couple episodes ago I talked about them expanding what was available here, trying to make the package more worth the money. Initially, it had been some DLC for Animal Crossing, and you were able to get Nintendo 64 and Sega Genesis emulators. And that by itself, while still really cool, I would not say is worth the $49.99 that you would be paying to have that yearly subscription. However, since then, they've continued adding stuff, and most recently to be added to the lineup is Splatoon 2 Octo Expansion. Now, I don't know how well-versed you are in the Splatoon lore, but Splatoon 2 is a fantastic game that really had, a pretty unique story mode, similar to the first game, but not to the point where it was, just rehashing the same thing again. And the only really, large complaint that people had on it, myself included, was that it was very short. You could beat the Splatoon 2, main campaign in a day. And that's not that big of a deal because Splatoon is a game series that is based almost exclusively around the multiplayer aspect of it. You are meant to go into PvP battles. You are meant to go into the salmon run, where you have cooperative, what is it, wave shooter gameplay while collecting eggs. That's all fantastic. I love that. However, Octo Expansion, when that dropped, almost tripled the size of Splatoon 2 in terms of longevity. And that extra, single-player content was some of the single best content that Nintendo has put on the Switch. One, it added a ton to the lore of the series. Two, it gave more screen time and character to people who, within the story of the game, hadn't really had much presence, despite being the face of the game. Marina, I love you, marry me. And beyond that, it actually had some of the coolest level design of anything ever. Every, level that you enter, or I shouldn't say every, most levels that you enter in Splatoon 2 Octo Expansion, before you even approach the level, it, one, charges you, a ticket fare for you to attempt the level, and then also allows you to enter with one of several different, weapon options. And some levels have, very specific weapons in mind, but if you choose a weapon that's less suited to the level that you're trying to complete, you get a higher payout in, a monetary reward for playing the level with that less advantageous weapon. So, if you play a level where you really need a long-range weapon and you use a melee weapon to get through it, you're gonna make bank. And the game did such a fantastic job of making sure that the levels were able to be completed by those, less advantageous weapons, that Nintendo went out of their way to make the level designs some of the smoothest possible. And there's, parts of that game. This game doesn't have parkour elements, and in fact, in terms of, run speed, is a pretty slow game. But there's elements of this game that, feel like you're parkouring across courses. It's insane. In addition to that, the completion of the single-player content within Octo Expansion rewarded the player with lots of multiplayer content. You got access to new weapons, you got access to new skins, and you got access to an entire new species of character. Once you complete Octo Expansion as Agent 8, you unlock the ability to play as an Octoling, or an octopus person, in the main game. And that can be taken onto the PvP online, so you can tell, like, oh, this person's playing as an Octoling, they've beat Octo Expansion. So it's also sort of like a status symbol within the community of like, oh, not only did you fork over the money for this, you're also pretty good at the game. And while this isn't really something that Nintendo has ever leaned into, I do think it's a positive direction, because this is like the closest that they've ever gotten to like the Overwatch or Apex side of things, where it's like, oh, I've put so much time into this game, look at all these cool ass skins I've got. I've got May, and look, now she's got legs. May, I love you, please marry me. In other news, actually kind of swapping over, segueing from Apex Legends. I'm sorry. Actually, yeah, I did say Apex Legends. Newcastle, we have a new hero. Legend? I don't remember. I think it's Legends, because the name of the game is Apex Legends, but I'm going to be completely honest. It's all very homogenous. Newcastle is a defense-based hero who looks really cool. I have a lot of issues with the cast of Apex, not because I think that the characters themselves are like poor representation or like not fun to play, but because a lot of them, I don't know, they just rub me the wrong way. And I've got very few of the characters that I like legitimately enjoy, but they're up there. Rampart, I love you. Please marry me. However, this new guy, Newcastle, is like the most charismatic guy. I want to be his friend. He's just the nicest guy, and he like wears that on his sleeve. And I'm excited. I know within the lore of the game, he is Bangalore's brother, who is sort of taking up the mantle of another hero who like perished back in his hometown, and he's like wearing the costume to like take on his name without letting other people know that that guy died. So there's some crazy stuff going on in the background, but like in game we don't really care about that as much. How's he play? So in Apex, most characters have roughly the same abilities with some slight variations between them. It's not like Overwatch where your entire character is your kit. It is like, oh no, you drop down, you pick up a weapon you like, cool, I've got this passive ability, you've got this ability that has like a cooldown on it, you've got one ultimate ability. And that's it. Everything else is entirely like movement based, or like what weapon you have, what you were able to find around, who you've killed, how many you've killed, etc., etc. Newcastle, like I said, is very defensive. So one of his abilities that's like a really, really cool, neat thing is that he can drag you away with a shield up while reviving you, which is going to be a pretty big deal for people with team members who rush off and do their own thing. That would be me. He has his ultimate is a giant fortress castle wall that puts up. I guess I would sort of compare it to Rampart's ability to put up like a little armed cover that you can fire shots through, but also use defensively. However, Newcastle's is freaking huge. Like, it's insane the amount of ground this covers, and I cannot emphasize enough, like, in terms of choke points, like holding a door, this is going to be like a huge game changer. Now there are like other heroes with ultimate abilities that will maybe circumvent that a bit, and not the least of which is Bangalore's herself. Even within his character trailer, they showed her like, hitting him from above with like the drop down missiles. And while one, that's kind of cheap, two, it does like make sense within the game. You don't want this giant castle wall to be the most overpowered thing ever. You just want it to be good. So I'm just waiting for that team of Gibraltar and Newcastle to become the meta, so that you can avoid shots from up top with like a dome that's close enough to where you can fire through Newcastle's walls, but also like close enough to where it'll cover the missiles coming in from up top. If it does it do that? I don't know. But yeah, that's happening. In other news, Bug Snacks. They're bugs, they're snacks. It came out, it was a launch title for the PS5. But now it isn't. So, Bug Snacks was a game made by, like, the Octodad developers. And you're on an island, and there's a bunch of, like, wacky animal friends with you. And there's bugs that are food. And when you eat the bugs that are food, part of your body turns into the food that they are. And this, like, weird eldritch horror of a game was marketed primarily to kids. It is supposedly like a kid's game. It does actually deal with some fairly mature topics in terms of, like, the story and the cast. But mostly it's just weird. I don't know what to think about it other than, man, that's a good theme song. If I was allowed to play the theme song right now, I would play the theme song. But I'm like 90% certain I can't. I just got a no from our podcasting director, along with a fun little peanut jig. But yeah, so Bugsnax is no longer PS5 exclusive. I know this because I got a YouTube recommendation for the Switch trailer. So that's fun. This does raise a few questions. Why was it a PS5 exclusive? This is a game that was marketed as like one of the big driving forces behind like next-gen consoles, and it is being ported to the Nintendo Switch, and even worse than a Nintendo Switch, the Xbox. Any of them. I don't like you. But yeah, no. So Bugsnax, it's on Switch now. I guess there it is. You can play it if you hadn't on PS5. Now you can on Switch. Why was this a next gen game? I don't fully understand it, but I am going to pay money for it. Next up, we have Sifu. This is another PS5 game, but this one actually is still PS5 exclusive. Sifu is insane. I don't know if y'all have been paying attention to this or like if you've heard about it. I don't know. Sifu is a game that is like extremely fluid third-person martial arts action beat 'em up. But your main character, Sifu, is I guess cursed or caught in time. I'm gonna be honest, I haven't played this game. I've only watched Maximilian Dude play this game. And from what I've seen, the game itself is insanity. You play as this guy who's going through beating Gumm and chewing. Oh wait, I can't say that, can I? Yeah, no, you are going through wrecking house, and if you take like above a certain threshold of damage, you age on the spot. To the point where like you can play as like young man Sifu, or you can play as like old man on the verge of death Sifu, which is really cool, seeing like the young prodigy style of martial arts and then the old master, but it's in like a single game and you're playing the same guy. I love this dynamic. It's so cool. However, it was lacking a few things in terms of like I guess you would say how long you can play it. Not in terms of like the story itself. The story itself, I mean, it's not the longest, but it's like it's sizable. It's okay. It's not gonna like be the Elden Ring that takes over your life as it has all of my friends. Uh, but it's definitely the sort of thing that like you can sink some time into. But it did lack a few things, and they've actually taken some inspiration from fighting games, like traditional, like actual normal fighting games. They've added, first of all, new outfits. You can change what Sifu's wearing. They've added the options for UI improvement, so you can change how menus look. You can change like how much is shown on screen, because normally the game's got a very minimalistic, like everything on screen is purely characters. You don't see, there's not like health bars or anything. You just like, oh, I'm fighting, and that's cool. I like that a lot. But then finally, and this is a big one for me because I'm a big fighting game fanatic, they put a training room. Let's go. Finally, I can combo root lab. I can find like cool neat setups. How I get Oki on people. Is this a third person game where you can run around in circles? Maybe Oki doesn't exist. I will make it exist. I'm weirdly more excited because the game has a training room now than I was when I saw the initial trailers for this game release. It's really cool. It just looks so good, and I'm very excited to see where they take it going forward, because this is not going to be the last wave of new content for this game. I guarantee you that. However, with that, we have honestly come to the end of news. There's not a ton to talk about. I did warn you this was coming. It's time to talk about the boy. It's time to talk about Kirby. Now, I've been playing a whole lot of Kirby in the Forgotten Land. Guys, it's good. The movement in this game, while I would not go so far as to say that base Kirby's movement is like as good and as solid as Mario Odyssey's, I will say, when you take into account the copy abilities, this game's got some movement. He be moving. He got the drill ability that you can do cool stuff with. I talked about this already. Man, Kirby's so cool. But, did you know that he's also terrifying? I'm gonna paint you a picture here. A picture of a universe that you've already seen, 'cause you live in it. Welcome to reality. Now, we here live in Earth times. We're gonna skip ahead a little bit to post-Earth times. Not like the Earth has been destroyed, just humanity. We had a big ol' nuclear war, and now the world is in a state of perpetual winter. The only beings on the planet are implements of war and destruction that we left running. However, there's not much in the way of life, so they really don't serve a purpose. They just sit, waiting, forever, until a particularly good boy shows up. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's back up a bit. Let's go to pre-Earth times. Long, long ago, there lived a race known only as the Ancients. They were not creative in terms of names, they were creative in terms of truly everything else. Now, the Ancients were, I suppose you would say, inventors, but they were divided into two great big sects. You got the science-y Ancients, and you got the magic-y Ancients. Now, the mages, in terms of the Ancients, were very involved in like the arcane. They were able to bend the laws of physics to their will, and they were able to do truly like things that didn't make sense, they would make sense. The sciencey ancients were the much more material sorts, and they I will not say that they got ahead of themselves, but they did make so many things with the assistance of the magic-y people that it would forever alter the course of the universe's fate. Now, these things were not exactly meant to do harm, but the pure destructive power of every single one of them cannot be understated. The Star Rod, a little stick with a star on it that has the power to make dreams reality. A clockwork star built into a supercomputer that had the ability to process data as wishes and grant them. And a ship that had the ability to tear through space and time itself in order to traverse distances as yet unheard of and unknown. These things were mere child's play for the ancients, and even long after they as a species and a society and a people were but memories in the universe's mind, these things persisted. These things were found truly forever. They lasted. Even upon being destroyed, they come back together on their own. They are beings of limitless power. Until God shows up. Now, here's the thing. There's this, I don't know. I believe the term was God of the End. Bringer of the End. One of those. Destroyer of worlds. There's God. God over here called Void Termina. Now, Void Termina is a being of pure chaos and destruction. And, as such, the ancients, pretty understandably, are kinda scared of him. Now, I won't go so far as to say that he's the scariest thing in the universe, but they did. They sure thought that. And so, they put together a team of 4 grand warriors who would fight against Void Termina. 3 of those grand warriors, upon approaching the Dark God, got their asses kicked immediately. Off stage, there they go. 3 stocked. Oh boy. Void Termina is able to, basically brush them off with 0 recompense. There's nothing that could faze him. The 4th warrior, a man by the name of Galactonite, 1v1's God and wins. He, single-handedly beats the Dark God, the crawling chaos of this dimension, and seals it away, presumably forever. Shatters it into pieces. So the science-y guys and the magic-y guys look at this guy and they go, Oh, that guy just beat up God. We should definitely also be scared of him. So the magic-y guys go, no problem. And they seal him away in a rock. He's in a rock forever now. Okay, bye-bye, Galactonite. You'll never reappear again. Well, now the magic-y guys just sealed away the guy that just 1v1'd God. So the science-y guys are like, oh, we should definitely be scared of them. They're very powerful. And so they exile all of the ancients from their society, saying, Ayo, you guys are too powerful. We can't have you infringing on our right to be the coolest peeps. So we're gonna kick you out. Because collectively, the ancients were kind of full of themselves. So the magic-y ancients have been exiled, and they're pretty upset about that, having been kicked away from their families and homes and whatnot. So they go off and they're like, well, screw you then. I'll make my own race of ancients, and it'll be cool, and we'll have like a death cult. So they made a death cult. This is, in Kirby lore, well before the origin of Kirby. However, it is intrinsically tied to where Kirby comes from, and we will get to that, because this cult would say, hey, remember that god from before, that thing that we, got that guy to seal away? Well, we're going to bring him back. And so they started collecting the shattered pieces of Void Termina and bringing them back together with the sole purpose of the destruction of the universe purely out of spite. Now, I won't say that, I should keep saying that I won't say things, but they shouldn't have did that. So, let's fast forward a whole lot. there is a being called dark matter. This being is roaming the universe and comes across a planet that it sure would like to visit and maybe take over. It looks around and it sees the beings of this planet are fairly peaceful. There is a tiny little bit of a war going on. The strongest warrior of this planet, a strange penguin creature by the name of King Dedede, has stolen all of the food in Dreamland, and the goodest boy is a little bit peeved about that, and so he's running off to try and, get the food back. Kirby's hungry. Now, Dark Matter sees this and goes, "You're not me." And he'd like to fix that. So, Dark Matter finds King Dedede, the strongest warrior in the land, and possesses him. To be clear, King Dedede was not possessed when he stole all the food. He did that because he's a jerk. But Kirby doesn't really know any of that. Kirby just wants his food back. Kirby's running along, getting food back, gonna be great. Cool, neat, whatever. That's all fine. You fight King Dedede as Kirby. You beat King Dedede as Kirby. His theme's bopping. He's got a hammer. You've got a hammer. Everyone has hammers. You fight King Dedede. The penguin falls. A strange dark aura arises from him. He stands up, and then his mouth opens up, and by his mouth, I mean his stomach. His stomach opens up, revealing a great maw of teeth with a single eyeball in the back of it. This is horrifying. This is absolutely terrifying. This is pretty cute, honestly, because it's using like NES and or GBA graphics. So, sorry, not GBA, NES and or like original Game Boy graphics. So you're not actually looking into the belly of the beast here, but make no mistake, the belly of the beast is looking into you. And it's awful. This good boy is fighting this less good boy as his stomach opens up and reveals the Eye of Chaos, the presence of dark matter. And of course, Kirby says Poyo and beats the shit out of him. Now, that's pretty normal, that's standard, that's fine, whatever. But upon beating King Dedede, who has been possessed by dark matter basically just leaves, and Kirby flies after him. Now, there's a big old fight in the sky. You beat dark matter, you shoot him in the eye a lot. Dark matter perishes, dead, dunzo, all gone. That's cool, neat. Kirby goes home, makes friends with King Dedede, eats some food, sleeps. Okay, so, but in the next game though, Dark Matter shows up again. Heyo, Dark Matter. There's a whole lot more of him now. See, Dark Matter is actually an offshoot of a neat little thing called Zero. Now, Zero is himself another grand eldritch horror that wants all things to be as he is. If you are not Zero, then Zero wishes out of a place of, I will say, empathy and disdain. Zero wishes for you to be freed from your life of not being Zero. Zero will help you. Zero will make you it. When Zero possesses you, it is out of a place of love. Zero sees itself as an angelic being. And in some capacity, it's right. Zero is the closest thing that this world has to divinity. Zero is going to have a bad time in the future. Darkness overflows the planet Popstar. Dreamland is covered in shadow. Kirby says, Poyo, stop that. Kirby's going to go on a grand adventure. He's going to bring some friends along. One of these friends, well, I mean, most of these friends are just like fun little animal creatures. You got a fish, you got a hamster, you got an owl. Look at these good lads. Then there's Gooey. Now, Gooey is weird. He's a little blue blob guy. He's got a real long tongue and some goofy eyes. If you didn't know, by looking at him, you wouldn't guess. However, Gooey is dark matter, or at least was a dark matter at some point. See, dark matter, as a species, are made up entirely of negative energy. Not negative in terms of like a literal scientific negative, negative as in not good, very bad, boo, don't like. Kirby, on the other hand, is so good of a boy that when this particular offshoot of dark matter shows up, well, it's interacting with the single most positive force in the universe. Kirby's a really good guy. He's sleeping, he's making friends, he's going for swims, he's eating some food. Well, dark matter wants to enjoy that, and so it ceases to be dark matter. It takes on a new form, and Gooey, Kirby's friend, is born. Now, it's very unclear whether or not Gooey remembers being dark matter, and if you want my personal opinion, I think it's entirely likely that the dark matter that you defeat, that supposedly perishes in the first game, later goes on to become Gooey. However, this has never been confirmed, only alluded to. Now, Gooey's here, Kirby's here, Zero's here. Hi, Zero! So, Zero's this great encroaching, crawling chaos. We've got a lot of those. The world is falling under darkness. Neat, cool. Kirby doesn't like that so much. He's gonna go fight Zero. Zero's noticed that the dark matter that it sent out to this planet as a scout to see, like, hey, what's up in this planet? How can I make this Zero? Stopped responding. It died. It's gone. Maybe it's a little blue boy. We don't know. But regardless, it stopped being Zero. And if there's one thing that Zero hates, it's when people stop being Zero. So instead of sending out a scout, Zero decides to check it out himself. Travels to Popstar and proceeds to take over the planet. Now, Kirby doesn't really care what the planet's made of. He does care that it's not as bright and sunny as it normally is, and he doesn't like that, and he wants you to stop it. So Kirby, understandably, beats the crap out of Zero. There's some other stuff going on. Maybe King Dedede helps a little bit, kind of unclear. But hey, it is what it is. Kirby shows up. Kirby beats up Zero. Zero meets Kirby in the sky for one like grand final boss, and things go wild. If you've ever seen like what the end of Earthbound looks like, you got one of those deals. There's like LSD crazy colorful background. The music's going crazy. Kirby might be on drugs. But regardless, this is the final showdown. You're fighting Zero. This is it. The great evil that faces reality is here. You defeat Zero, and during that fight, Zero lets its body go. A single red eye pulls out from a corpse and leaves the husk in space. The eye bleeds as with the last remnants of what could potentially be called a soul struggle against the almighty that is Kirby. And it perishes. Zero is no more. Kirby wins. Yay! Do the fun little dance. Neat. Cool. Next game. So, last entity we had was called Zero. We're gonna need like a cool name. Okay, so in Kirby 64, 02 shows up. 02 has now gone full biblical angel. 02 has a halo and wings now. Remember when I said, like, hey, during the fight, Zero leaves, like, the husk of its corpse out floating in space. Well, turns out a Zero might have some Wolverine going on, because that husk regenerates. The corpse floats off and comes back to life. However, now that it's come back to life, it's more aware of itself than it was before. Previously, it just thought, I want everything to be me. Now it thinks, oh, everything else has already determined that it will be me. It's its destiny. I have to help it get there. And so, 02, using the abilities that it's gained in its newfound angelic form, proceeds to cover the entirety of the planet. I think it's called, like, Twinkle Heart? Don't quote me on that one. Sparkle Heart? I don't know. It's a big old heart-shaped planet. 02 covers it. Okay. Oh boy, it's gone. Kirby doesn't like that. Kirby's got friends. There's like a little fairy girl. There's like a little human painter girl. They're gonna show up. Kirby's gonna be like, hey, stop that. You're gonna get one of the coolest sounding final boss themes in anything ever. And Kirby destroys the god of the universe. Kirby shoots it in the eye until it dies. Kirby watches as the blood rains down. Just to be clear, this is E for everyone game. Kirby watches as the blood rains down from the heavens. And as the being known as 02 falls, so too does Kirby. His abilities, for some reason, have made him real tired real fast. But hey, he made some new friends. He got a kiss on the cheek. He's happy. He gets to go play. He gets to eat food. Kirby's a good boy. Now, we have come to the point where it's time to talk about Kirby Superstar Ultra. Now, normally I would say just, oh no, Kirby Superstar. But Kirby Superstar Ultra is a remake of the SNES game for the Nintendo DS that adds in a whole bunch of stuff. And normally this game would be like, oh, we've introduced Marks. Marks makes the sun and the moon fight each other, and in doing so, tricks Kirby into going on a big galactic quest through the Milky Way, and puts together all these star fragments to summon forth one of the clockwork stars, the computers that I mentioned before, created by the ancients, to do his bidding. And on Kirby's end, he wants to summon Nova, this like giant, like weird face of a clockwork star, to make the sun and the moon stop fighting. Mark steals that wish and wishes to become an all-powerful being. Marx grants that wish. I'm sorry, Nova grants that wish. Marx becomes all-powerful. Marx is, for a short time, the single most powerful being in all of existence, and he is terrifying. What used to be a bouncing baby boy on a ball is now a jester with Toho-esque wings, fangs that reach all the way down to his feet, and a cute little bow tie. His face now splits in half to reveal a black hole in the center. His mouth stretches to insane proportions, with pure nothingness collapsed into the singularity used to fire a laser that can end the Earth. Well, not just the Earth, everything else too. Kirby doesn't like that, uses the stone ability and kicks his shit in. You might be seeing a theme here. Kirby regularly fights gods, approaches the all-powerful, says stop it, and slaps them until they do. Because Kirby doesn't care. Kirby just wants to have a good time and rest with the people he likes. This is going to continue to be a theme. By the way, a little bit ago, this one really weird guy showed up. His name's Meta Knight. He says we're all too lazy. He made a warship because we were too lazy and declared war on all of us. Kirby doesn't like that, goes and beats him up. Neat, cool, whatever. Really kind of a dumb reason to start a war anyway. But hey, who cares? Meta Knight's a friend now. But now, with the introduction of Meta Knight, we reach the multiverse. Kirby has timelines in which there are what-if scenarios, similar to, like, Marvel's What If, where it's like, what if instead of this person fighting this fight, this other person did it? And Kirby deals with these pretty regularly. One of the first instances of this was Revenge of Meta Knight. Or, sorry, it might actually be, like, the true Revenge of Meta Knight. I don't remember. But anyway, Meta Knight goes through all of the adventures that Kirby went through during the events of Superstar Ultra, the last of which is Milky Way Witches. But when Meta Knight summons Nova, he doesn't wish to be all-powerful. He doesn't wish for the sun and the moon to stop fighting. Meta Knight doesn't care. Meta Knight wishes to fight the single most powerful warrior in the universe. Nova complies and summons forth Galactonite. Remember Galactonite? Galactonite was the being trapped in a stone forever, who, in a previous timeline, 1v1'd God, the being known as Void Termina, the destroyer of reality, and won. Meta Knight summons him, and then Meta Knight wins. The power scaling in Kirby is crazy, y'all. Just to be clear, this is a world-ending guy from a very similar race with a very similar mask to Meta Knight, who is himself very similar in appearance to Kirby. This is strange. We don't fully understand what this means, but this is definitely weird. However, this is not the last time that Galactonite would show up. Now, moving forward in the games a little bit, we come to Kirby. Let's go Return to Dreamland first, and then Triple Deluxe after. A guy named Taranza shows up. Nah, wait, no, that's wrong. I've got the wrong guy. Taranza is from Triple Deluxe. What's the name of Kirby and the Forgotten Land? Nope. Kirby's Return to Dreamland. Final boss. Magalore. Okay, sorry. There's this guy named Magalore, and he is, let's say, space pirate, I guess. Really, this is Space Indiana Jones, who's just kind of obsessed with the idea of finding these relics from the ancients. More specifically, he wants to find a crown that can make dreams reality, similar to the Star Rod from before. And he wants to maintain a ship, like I talked about before, that can travel all of space and time in a matter of instants. And he does it. He gets Kirby's help, and he secures these things. These artifacts are now entirely his. But during his transformation towards the end, when he takes the crown for himself, betraying Kirby, the crown starts moving on his head. It transforms him. It takes hold of him. This crown is a parasitic being, and Magalore didn't realize. So, that's neat, I suppose. You got the power you wanted. What was the cost? Hey, it's just your soul or whatever. But it's fine. Kirby forgives him, and so he beats the ever-loving crap out of him. Magalore's down for the count. Kirby beats up this crown for a bit. That's cool. The crown changes forms a little bit there, though. It opens up, revealing an eye. This is one of the first hints we receive throughout the Kirby franchise, that dark matter, 002, may have originated from the ancients. We don't know exactly how they're tied together, but there's definitely some connection here. And if I was to venture a guess, I would say it was probably the magic-y ancients that were responsible for this. because this is not the sort of invention that they would have created when the society was a whole. This is the work of the Death Cult. Now, moving forward, we come to Kirby Triple Deluxe. Kirby Triple Deluxe was the first Kirby game on the 3DS, and it's a grand old time. Pretty kind of self-contained in terms of story. There's just this one really weird thing that's happening. I mentioned fairies before. Now there's flower people. So the flower people drop a seed, right? And they are currently being attacked by a race of alien insects. And they drop this seed down to the planet Popstar in hopes that it will save them. And that seed falls right underneath the house of one Kerbo McGuffin. Now, Kirby wakes up and finds that his house has now been relocated. It has been thrust up into the sky because a giant dreamstalk grew up underneath it. Now, the dreamstalk is I suppose it's also a parasitic being in a way. It is a beanstalk that feeds off of positive energy and repurposes it for its flowers. To be clear, it is not like getting rid of positive energy. It's just using it. So when it gives off energy, that too is positive energy. We're not dealing with dark matter anymore. The end result of this, though, is that Kirby goes to space. He just walks up there. Up he goes. At the end of all things, there is Queen Sectonia, who, using a mirror from Kirby and the Amazing Mirror, has changed her form to be a giant wasp because she thinks that's pretty. There's a guy over here. His name's Taranza. He's a huge simp, and he's kind of worried about Sectonia, honestly. But like, she's doing whatever. She's pretty. She's taken over worlds. She's a great demonic warlord. Kinda on the scary side of things. But hey, Kirby doesn't like that. Queen Sectonia fights Kirby. And of course, even with all of the powers granted to her by this mirror, she loses. Because it's Kirby. But instead of accepting her defeat, she sacrifices herself to the dreamstalk. She allows it to consume her. And the dreamstalk takes on her form and kind. It's not destroying energy, it's just repurposing it. And from this, you receive a giant, wasp-headed, tendriling creature with infinite energy pulling from the very root of the planet against one squishy boy. Now, granted, the squishy boy is easily the victor here. However, this is one of the first instances in which Kirby does not forgive. Kirby does not forget. Kirby shoots Queen Sectonia in the face until she dies. That's not an exaggeration. He literally swallows the equivalent energy of a sun and burns her to death atop her own castle. There is no forgiveness for this one. She moved his house. This is far from the end of Kirby's tale. However, I am going to, because we are coming up on a time limit here, I am going to save some for next time, perhaps next semester. It might be a while before we are able to make another episode, but while we have been here, I have very much enjoyed your company. Thank you so much for listening, and once again, I will ask you, if you have any suggestions, comments, questions, or feedback, you can reach out to me at deforest_white124@mymail.eku.edu, or our broadcasting director, Ryan Gumm, at ryan_gum1@mymail.eku.edu. You can find the Eastern Progress, as well as our other podcasts, at www.easternprogress.com. And you can find us on social media at The Eastern Progress on Facebook and at Eastern Progress on Instagram and Twitter. Thank you very much for listening. Have a wonderful day, have a wonderful afternoon, have a wonderful evening and night.